Hello, my name is Nat Senega, and today I'll be discussing the health and environmental impacts caused by one of America's worst man-made environmental disasters, the asbestos outbreak in Libby, Montana. Through this presentation, I will provide insight into the W.R. Grace and Company mine in Libby, Montana, and the dangers of asbestos-contaminated vermiculite, an analysis of the asbestos outbreak, and the resulting health and environmental impacts, both locally and nationally. To give an overview of my topic, I will discuss the W.R. Grace and Company mine, asbestos-contaminated vermiculite, local and national impacts of the asbestos outbreak, environmental impacts and EPA response, and a summary of my findings. For nearly 6 decades, the people in the small town of Libby, Montana were surrounded by toxic asbestos. It covered patches of grass, dusted the tops of cars, and drifted through the air in a hazy smoke that became a part of their daily lives. This was a direct result of vermiculite mining that caused one of the worst asbestos outbreaks in the United States. In 1963, the Maryland-based W.R. Grace and Company took ownership of the mine, and this area began producing 80% of the vermiculite in the world. Vermiculite is a naturally occurring laminar aluminum iron magnesium silicate. It expands when heated and has been employed in many applications such as loose-filled attic insulation and carrier for various chemicals, including herbicides and fertilizers. Vermiculite from other sources is not known to be associated with any substantial adverse health effects. However, the vermiculite-owned mine in Libby contained elongate mineral particles identified as a mixture of asbestiform and fibrils. This resulted in a deadly substance. Statistics on asbestos-caused diseases uncover an epidemic of tragic proportions. Thousands of Americans are diagnosed with asbestos-related conditions each year, and hundreds of thousands of people are diagnosed with these conditions around the globe. As you can see from Figure 1, asbestos-related lung cancer claims the most lives both globally and in the U.S., followed by mesothelioma. In fact, around 3,000 Americans are diagnosed with mesothelioma every year. And as we will see in this presentation, asbestos-contaminated vermiculite exposure caused a significant percent of. Despite the dangers of asbestos, the majority of the world's population remains at risk of exposure because government officials in their countries have refused to ban the substance. According to the Minerals Yearbook of the U.S. Geological Survey, 1.9 million tons of asbestos were mined for commercial use in 2012. As shown in Figure 2, developing countries throughout Africa, Asia, and South America use it extensively now, and manufacturing industries in many countries like China do not heed the warning of the dangers of asbestos in order to create affordable, mass-produced building materials that contain the deadly substance. In the case of the asbestos exposure in Libby, Montana, an estimated 400 Libby residents died, and almost 3,000 more are currently suffering illnesses related to this exposure. This is due to the fact that not only were workers at the mine and mill exposed, townspeople were also affected, as the mine had distributed their leftover vermiculite for use in playgrounds, backyards, gardens, roads, and a number of other popular locations in the town. This resulted in widespread contamination. In fact, in a published study analyzing non-malignant respiratory disease mortality in Libby vermiculite workers from 1963 to 2006, as shown in Table 1, they found that the average standardized mortality rate was 2.5, highlighting the fact that there was an excess amount of deaths in the study populations due to this. This deadly exposure was not limited to Libby, as vermiculite was shipped throughout the U.S. to more than 200 domestic processing and receiving facilities. This spatial table highlights the 10 states that received the greatest number of shipments from Libby, Montana. California and Texas received the highest number of imports, as they relied on the vermiculite because of its usefulness in construction. Interestingly, the first identification by public health authorities of pulmonary abnormalities associated with Libby vermiculite concerned exposure outside of Libby. Benign pleural effusions were identified among 12 workers in a vermiculite processing plant in Marysville, Ohio, which received most of its vermiculite from Libby. This highlights the expansive health and environmental effects of this asbestos outbreak. In 1999, EPA responded to citizen, local government, and media concerns regarding possible exposure to asbestos from the nearby vermiculite mine. Shockingly, the measured air concentration of asbestos in downtown Libby when the mine was operating was nearly 100,000 times the concentration in the air today. This decrease in concentration is due in large part to the closure of the mine and the EPA's removal program that conducted investigations. And although mining and activities at the Libby mine ceased in 1990 and 2005, the Department of Justice began criminal proceedings against W.R. Grace, accusing them of concealing knowledge of the negative health effects of the vermiculite mine as far back as the 1970s. W.R. Grace and executives were ultimately acquitted of the charges, but they paid $250 million to be used for the cleanup as part of the settlement. In summary, the asbestos-contaminated vermiculite mined in Libby, Montana. Thank you for listening to this presentation.